The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The DrStem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The DrStem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
Are you and your partner on the same page when it comes to talking about retirement? Or are you one of the millions of couples that totally avoid the discussion of these critical conversations? We have today one of the experts on couples retirement, Roberta Taylor, who's going to be discussing with us some of the 10 questions that you might want to start to consider talking about when it comes to retirement. Welcome to the DrStem Show, and welcome, Roberta.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Thank you. Actually, this is a reunion for us because we met at the National Speakers Association about 5-6 years ago.
Yes.
And we were attending the Fast Track program, which was teaching us all aspects of speaking and business. And if you get a chance to attend the National Speakers Association Fast Track program, take it, because it was one of the best programs that I have taken. Yes. So thank you for being here. Because there's been a gap between the 5-6 years that we haven't seen each other, there's a lot that you're doing, a lot that I'm doing. So I'm going to ask you if you can introduce yourself to the audience.
Certainly. Well, it's been quite an active and busy 6 years for me.
Yes.
My focus has been on helping couples, helping individuals really look at what's next and how they want to live the next part of their lives. People use the word retirement. We use it in the title of the book. However, retirement is a word that really needs to be retired because people are not retiring in the same way as they used to. And one of the things that I say is that it's more important what you're going towards than what you're coming from, because people are living longer and healthier lives today. So it's not their parents' retirement, it's their
Retirement.
definition of what they want those years to look like.
Yes. Roberta co-authored a brand new book that is coming out soon. It's called The Couple's Retirement Puzzle, 10 must-have conversations for transitioning to the second half of your life. I'll read you an excerpt of what she says. She says, developing a shared vision. It is not uncommon to find couples, at midlife and beyond, wondering where the years have gone. They're also questioning who they are as individuals, as a couple, and beginning to think about the many questions related to retirement and transition. Some of the questions that she discusses in this book, which we will discuss today, are if, when, and how to retire. Can we afford to retire? How will our roles change? How will we spend our time as a couple? And what kind of lifestyle do we want to be living? Wow. Yeah. Tell us how it was to write this book.
It was interesting and wonderful and challenging at the same time. Because when you write a book that's information-oriented like this, although there's a lot of humor in this, because when you're talking about couples, you have to have a sense of humor.
Yes.
But it forces you to look at your own perspective and what kinds of things we've been avoiding.
Yes.
And my husband, Bruce, actually was an editor for the book. We had other editors, but he was one. Yes. And he had his own perspective, which was, quite, it raised a lot of conversation for us.
Yes.
The book is co-authored. My co-author and I conducted several focus groups before we wrote the book to get information. We had our own ideas about what needed to go in the book, what were the important conversations, but we really needed to reality test that with other real couples.
Yes.
So we did several focus groups. We did interviews. We actually also did a focus group with couples who were in their 80s and 90s.
Wow.
Most of the groups were in their 50s and 60s and early 70s.
Yes.
And we did that because it felt important to ask them, the older people, what advice would you give to younger couples today?
Yes, yes, yes. 10 must-have conversations for transitioning to the second half of life. You talk about you couldn't help but look at yourself as well when you were writing this. I couldn't help but look at myself as I was preparing for this conversation and this discussion today, because we're talking about the second half of life. And I thought, you know, it's easy for me to say, well, I'm not there yet, I'm still young. But being a week away from turning 49, and I'm thinking, well, second half means after 50. So, so this applies to me as well. I'll tell you, it was scary.
Yes.
To be able to get to that understanding and saying, you know what, I have to take a look at this and I have to understand and also open my mind and my heart to having a conversation like this here. How hard was it for people to be open to talking about retirement?
It was difficult.
Yes.
One of the advantages of doing something like a focus group where you have 6 couples in a group is that once they started to talk about some of their own issues, you could see people visibly going, like, we're not the only ones. But for couples who are just, say, coming in to talk about retirement and wanting some coaching around that, it can be very, very hard because they may not be on the same page. They may not have had the opportunity or taken the opportunity or had the time for the opportunity to talk about these kinds of issues. Because as you said, you feel like, well, I'm still young. I don't need to talk about that.
And I think, I can't help but think, to get to a conversation like this with a partner, it also brings up how have we been as a couple, have we been getting along in other little things in our life, or have we been able to talk about other things? So if you're not at that point where we get along, or we've been able to see eye to eye in raising our kids, and you know the kind of home that we are currently living in, it probably would be difficult to talk about retirement and spending the rest of our lives together.
Yes, yeah. The foundation of the book is really about communication and helping people understand what are the most important things you need to know about communicating, even before you try to have those conversations.
Yes. Because I'm thinking, you know, I mean, there will be a lot of challenges that people will face. So what were some of those challenges that you faced when it comes to couples talking about retirement?
Well, first of all, men and women have different styles of communication. Now, I'm going to generalize, which may not be totally fair, but I found that it's true.
Okay.
You know, men are kind of problem solvers and women are processors. You know, they get to the emotional piece.
Yes.
So to be able to communicate, you need to understand that about your partner. So that's kind of foundational. And what I always say is that partnership is like a dance. Yeah. When one person changes the steps, the other person is going to need to also change the steps, or else they'll be tripping over each other, which often happens with couples.
I can visualize it stepping on each other.
Yeah,
You stepped on me.
Yeah, it's like who's in control, who's in charge of the dance here.
Yeah, yeah. And it sounds like at this point when it comes to sensitive conversations like this here, it doesn't have to be who's in control. We both have to be in control and be able to take a step back when
That's right.
the other partner is not understanding so that we can come to that shared vision.
That's
You
right.
talk about a shared vision. Can you elaborate on what a shared vision is?
Sure. A shared vision is when couples are able to have these conversations. They're able to listen to each other, to really hear what the other person is saying without interrupting. You know, often and I'm going to go back to communication if that's okay, because often in communication, we're so busy thinking about what it is we want to say that we're not hearing what our partner is saying.
Yes.
So being able to listen, creating the space to listen, creating the time to talk about these things. You can't talk about these things on the run.
Yes.
You know, you really need to make time to do it. And I encourage people, go out on a date, get away from the phones, get away from whatever else is distracting you. For many people, it's the computer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But a shared vision is when couples are able to have these conversations that are important, like finances. Can we afford to retire? Where are we going to live? That's a big question for a lot of people.
Yes.
What about when our roles change? Going through these conversations one by one. And in the book, we have some terrific exercises. We have exercises that you do individually, and then you come together and share your responses. And we also have exercises that couples do together, which we call, you know, kind of fun. Let's play. Let's have a good time with this.
Awesome. We are here today talking about retirement, the couple's retirement puzzle. And I know for some of you, you're asking, well, what if I don't have a partner? We're going to take a quick break and we're going to ask Roberta to explain to us, how does that work for somebody who's single? We'll be right back. The couple's retirement puzzle, before we went on break, we discussed about someone who's single and who's not, because I know the book is about couples, so there must be someone watching there and go, well, you know, I'm in my second half and I'm single. How do they work through the retirement puzzle?
Well, I think the conversations are equally as important to single people, at least many of them are, because most of us don't live in isolation. So we have other people in our lives. We have family, we have children, we have friends, we have colleagues. And the other folks in our life who are close to us really need to know what we're thinking about so that they can be part of not necessarily the decisions, but so they can know what's happening. Particularly in the second half of life where there are health issues, people start thinking about who's going to take care of me when I'm older. You need to have those conversations.
So I think that gets us into the question of why would having a conversation be so important for couples or anyone, rather, in the second half of life? Why is it important for them to look at that retirement?
Okay. As we go through life, we have different milestones in life, right? So when couples are young and they're first getting married, they're either establishing their careers, having children, buying houses, whatever.
Yes.
Over time, what's important to us changes. Our values can change, where we want to put our energy, our sense of life purpose can change. And couples in particular we all make a lot of assumptions. And what happens is you make an assumption, you don't even realize you're making an assumption, and you believe what you're thinking, right? So couples need to check out those assumptions. You know, it may be that 10 years ago, I said, I really want to move to California when I retire. Well, that would not be the case today necessarily. But he might be thinking, she really wants to move to California, and I don't want to move to California. So if they don't check that out with each other, they don't know what each other is thinking.
Yeah. So talking about checking, is there a certain age that we need to start saying, well, let's talk about retirement?
Well, some people say, and I would agree, that couples, even younger couples, need to look ahead at creating a life plan for themselves. And it may not be they're thinking necessarily about retirement, but the way I think about it is that they're growing together. And if you start having those conversations early on in your relationship, then you know what each other is thinking. You know how you're growing together. Are you on the same path?
Yes. It also reminds me, because this show is primarily to address the teenagers, their parents, and teachers, as well as the community out there. But as we were preparing this, I remember discussing with you that in order for us to even address the issues that the teenagers face, we cannot negate or forget that their parents have their own issues that they need to talk about, that they need to deal with in order to be there for their teenagers.
That's right.
And this is one of them, talking about retirement, that they need to be on the same page and know where they're going in order for them to even be there as parents or grandparents. And in your couples that you were talking to for your book, were there any that were raising teenagers or, at that age, or all of them had empty nest?
No, there were certainly people who had teenagers.
Grandchildren, yeah.
I would say one of the examples is my co-author, Dory. She came to parenthood later in life, and her son was, as we were working on the book, he was entering adolescence. So she certainly had some of those issues. There's also the case of boomerang kids, and they're adult children who may have left home, gone to college, gotten married, gotten divorced, went through bankruptcy. I mean, it's been a really tough several years. And you'll find that many parents who are in this age group of 50s, 60s, 70s have adult children and maybe grandchildren living at home with them.
That's true. That's true. Now, why would it be difficult for couples or for singles to start talking about retirement?
Well, there are a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
One is, I said before, they're too busy. They're so busy, and it's not on the top of their minds. Other things are. But I would say primarily because some of these conversations are really hard. They're difficult to have. They're challenging to have. And nobody wants to bring up a difficult conversation, in part because they don't know how to talk about it.
Does it always have to involve money? Because I think one of the reasons might be, well, we don't even have money to go through our day-to-day living right now. So to even start talking about retirement, it means that we have to have savings and we have to have investments. So is that really necessary to be able to start such a conversation?
Well, a financial planner might not agree with me. I think it's important to plan financially. But I think in order to plan, it's about financial planning and life planning. And it's an integration of the two. And one of the questions that I always ask couples is, how much is enough? What is it that you want to do in the next part of your life? And how many what kinds of resources do you need to support that?
It means change.
Some people cut back to half-time, and other people develop encore careers. And an encore career is something that you have maybe always wanted to do. It comes from a sense of passion about doing something.
Yes. You know what? We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
You know, when we begin talking about retirement today, I thought, wow, what a difficult conversation that must be for couples, even for singles that are preparing for the second half of their life. And I thought, it sounds more like retirement, you're talking about your death, you're talking about the end. But as you can see, the way that we've been having this conversation, it flows naturally once you start the conversation. So what I want to do is to get a little bit of what Roberta suggests in her book on how to start the conversation. On page 14 of her brand new book, The Couple's Retirement Puzzle, 10 must-have conversations for transitioning to the second half of your life. Page 14, actually, Roberta and Dorian, because it's a co-authored book, they both say starting the conversation, because I know most of you are thinking, how do I even start this conversation? Here's what they say. Even when both partners are committed to the communicating, beginning a complex conversation can be difficult. Here are a few tips to help you navigate the process. Agree to talk together with a focus on listening to each other. Start with an agreed upon topic. So you don't necessarily have to just start, let's talk about retirement. No, you can start on anything that you agree upon having the conversation on. Agree to disagree. I like that. Mm-hmm. They also said, don't bring up past issues. Women, are you listening? And then this one is big for women as well, because they say don't make assumptions. And that was only a part of what suggestions that they give you. I love those. Yes. Yeah. And as I'm thinking, am I right that most of them apply to women, because we are the ones that will jump to bring in past conversations. We are the ones that will bring in assumptions on, what I thought you wanted, or I thought you heard me say, or was it equal when you did the research?
Men can bring up past grievances as well, but often what happens if women start with what the partner experiences as attacking, what men often do is kind of go into their cave, they shut down, and then women kind of push even harder. Yeah. It's not a great place to be. And sometimes you need to say, okay, we really need to talk about this. It's important to me to talk about it. Yes. Can we make a time to do that, to get some kind of agreement around that?
And I think one of the things that we were talking about as we were discussing this today is being prepared for such a conversation, and how you as a couple have lived, your life at this point, to the point of having the conversation. So I think about the empty nest. When the kids leave, and now you have to face each other, and you were used to going to the sports, you were used to attending parent meetings, and you were used to doing this and that, but you didn't have that much face-on-face time together, and now it's that time.
Yes.
Is this the time to start preparing and talking about how are we going to end the second half of our life?
Well, I would say it's the time to start talking about how are we going to begin the second half of life.
There we go.
Because it is a wonderful opportunity to have whatever it is you want in your life. Now, of course, there are health issues. There are other issues. But we have time, we have energy. There are opportunities to do things that maybe you never had a chance to do before. But there needs to be a sense of respect for each other and knowing what's important to each other. Yes. Some people go back to school. I just read about a woman in her 60s who was a judge, and she decided to become a nurse in her 60s.
And she went back.
And she went back to become a nurse. I mean, things today are possible where they weren't when our parents were in this stage of life.
Yes. And it's about opening your mind. I like the word that you used where you say transitioning to the second half, because then it takes away that retirement.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
It takes
Yeah,
away
yeah.
the retirement, the end. We are transitioning. That means we have a new beginning.
That's right.
It's a new beginning.
That's right. Because transition is a process.
Yes.
It's not something that just happens like
Yes.
that. And it's an opportunity again for couples to renegotiate what they want their relationship to be like. And issues like space come up often.
Mm-hmm.
You know, say the woman's been working at home and the man is retiring, and then they're both in the same space. They need to learn how to negotiate and share that space.
Yes.
Women tend to have networks.
Yes.
A lot of women friends, they belong to groups, they belong to clubs. Men often don't have those kinds of resources, and often what happens is they rely on their wives or partners to kind of plan the social calendar, to entertain them, to be there for them, and that can cause a lot of conflict between them.
Because now for the partner, you're being a nag, and you never used to be around to nag me about planning this. We go back to that dancing where now you're
Right.
stepping on my toes,
Right.
so I don't want to do this. So what are some of the options that people that cannot afford to retire, what are some of the options that are out there for them?
Well, they can continue to work in one way or another.
Yes.
Often what people do is think about something that, well, when I see couples, when I see individuals, I always say to them, what did you love to do as a kid? Because that's often a clue to the direction
Yes.
that they might want to go in. Now, if a woman says to me, I wanted to be a ballerina, well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But perhaps she's interested in something related to the arts and dance.
So we are talking now about one of my very interesting works that I do is finding your passion and following your passion.
Yes.
So we're getting back into that where at that phase you need to start looking at what is it that you're passionate about, that when you're doing it doesn't feel like work.
That's right.
It's
That's
exciting.
right. Exactly.
Yeah, you know what, Roberta, I wish this, we had more time to continue talking about this. It's been great having you. But before we end, I just want you to tell the listeners out there, where can they find or order the Couples Retirement Puzzle?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you actually,
Yes.
as I mentioned before we started, the book we self-published. The book was picked up by a publisher.
Yes.
So it will be coming out again in around July, August.
Okay.
So people can go on Amazon and pre-order. And the title for the new book is The Couples Retirement Puzzle, Transitioning to Creating,
Yeah.
the 10 must-have conversations
Okay.
for transitioning to a creative, amazing new life together.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It's been great having this conversation. As I said, it's one of those that I wouldn't have had myself or, sought out to say, I need to talk about retirement, because then I'm just starting and I'm thinking, well, I've got a lot of time to talk about that. But as we are starting and transitioning into the second half, what I've learned today is plan also for that time when you're not able to work, or it's time for you to say, you know what, I need to retire from my work.
Yes.
So thank you for that, insight that you gave me today. In ending this conversation, I would like to read what one of your readers said about the book. She says, the Couples Retirement Puzzle is a treasure trove of practical wisdom for those just beginning the journey, and even for those who have already stepped into it. I also want to add that this book it offers practical exercises, as Roberta was saying, that you and your partner can do, or you as a single person can do. And don't forget that she's a coach for retirement. So if you'd like to contact her, her information is right at the bottom of our screen. Until next time, thank you for watching the DrStem Show.